these are the steps basically to check your brakes. I already did the front brakes, and I'm working now on the back brakes. So I'm going to put you on my head and we'll see how it goes. The trick is basically loosen up all your bolts before you lift the car. There we go. And then I got a 3-ton jack that you can jack up the car just enough to lift the tire off the ground. There we go. And then you continue unlocking the rest of the bolts. So the trick is basically just leave one bolt at the very end, especially the ones at the bottom. I always leave the one bolt in, and then I just press my feet up against the tires and then take off that last one. Another trick too is to leave the tire just underneath the vehicle, just so if it does fall, it'll fall on the tire. Or you can actually use some type of axle stand, and this will in case that 3-ton lift, if it breaks, then this axle stand will actually keep it or hold it up. Alright, so now that we got the tire off, you'll notice that there's a bunch of bolts here. I'm going to try to get in closer. There's a bolt here and a bolt down here. So basically, get the wrench, and you always go counterclockwise. Now, you got to kind of do the opposite. You always think righty-tighty and lefty-loosey, but you got to think of the angle as in you're doing it the opposite. So if I go to left, lefty-loosey, but it's really actually tightening it up. So I got to actually go the opposite way. So just give it a good, holy jeez, might need my hammer. What you could do is just hold it in place and then give it a couple of whacks, and then she's loose. There we go. And we got the other one down here. Ouch. Alright. So this is going to be a video for my kids. If ever you, or anybody on the internet, if you work on a, this is a Nissan Murano 2010, and wow, the whole thing just came right off. Look at that. I like buying these paper towels. They come in a roll. You can get them at Crappy Tire. They're expendable, as in you can just throw them away afterwards, but they do a great job so that to clean your actual brakes from all the grease. And it is a messy, very messy job. Now, the problem with this one is this axle, or it's part of the axle, is in the way. So when I unscrew the bolt, you'll notice that I won't be able to remove this. So like I said, you'll notice, I don't know if you can see, this bolt, as I said, if I keep on screwing it, it won't be able to come out because of this beam is actually in the way. So another thing too is the hose, you don't want too much pressure on it, so try to find like a bucket. So we have another wrench here, which we're gonna loosen the big bolt. Again, there's one way at the bottom down here, and then there's another one right here as well. I don't know, again, if you guys can see that. Oh, and this one's actually smaller. Interesting. So the socket wrench, this 22 millimeters, I don't know if you can see it, 22 millimeters is for the front caliper, and this is going to be a smaller one, so I'm going to have to go get a different size. Probably 3/4, but I'm going to bring extra ones just in case, so I don't have to come back and forth. So this is the hockey puck I was telling you about, and then I use like a little clamp to squeeze the caliper back in place. And again, you could buy this at Canadian Tire. These wrenches are really handy. So at the bottom, this is where you pop the hood, and then there's a little latch inside. You got to pull it up, and then it lifts it up. So at the very top here, this is where your brake fluid is. You have to take the cap off. If you leave it on and you try to squeeze it, it won't. And as you're squeezing it, what's going to happen is this liquid's going to come up a little bit. So what I do is I always pop the cap off, 3/4. There it is. So again, same concept. You don't want to go to the left because you're actually tightening it. You want to go the opposite way, which is to the right. Give it a couple of whacks. This one's on a little bit more tight. I definitely tightened it to make sure, because this is what's attached to the actual axle to the wheel, and you don't want your brakes moving at all. Turn it inwards, or there we go. And that top one is loose. See? Same concept. I got one. Use the one at the bottom. What I normally do is I just hold the bottom here as I'm whacking it, and just watch your hands. I learned this on YouTube from I don't know if he was a mechanic but I thought I'd share this in case someone else has a Nissan Murano and wants to know or wants to do the brakes themselves. And listen, I'm not a mechanic whatsoever. However, when I watched that video, I just found it very simple. I just found a bucket here. Place the bucket just underneath it, and then you could actually lean everything on top of this, and then not have to worry about the wire getting damaged. Let's take this brake pad out. They're fine. Again, I'm not sure what is going on, why this is not coming out. There we go. Holy, yeah, that rubber thing. And I'll show you how to squeeze that, basically. The piston. Like I said, I just use the puck, and then I just put it over top here, and you'll notice see how far out it is, because it was pressing up against the brake pads. So I just use the puck to protect it, because again, you don't want to go directly to this thing because you might damage it. At least with the puck, it does a full and even pressure, basically. So I just clamp the side here, right in the middle, and I just turn it to the right, which squeezes it together. And a hockey puck is really handy because it fits perfectly. And then you'll notice the piston basically goes back in. So again, you have to open up the other side to make sure that the liquid can go back in through the front, and then now the piston's back in. So just give it a good wipe. Get rid of any rust or any type of crap that collects here because of our Canadian winters. So basically, the router comes right off, no problem at all, and it's pretty clean. It's not dirty at all. It's basically within this drum, these brake pads. This is for your emergency brake, and you'll notice I have the grease to make sure that it doesn't seize up. You can spray some like WD-40 on there, or I actually went out. This is not sponsored. I go and get some Jigaloo, just to make sure things don't seize up. Don't be shy with this stuff. There's another one here. So eventually I'm going to have to change these because this one's starting to get a little bit low, but for now I think it's fine. So what I like doing is the paper towel. I'll use 2 of them. And I'll just lay it down on the ground so it doesn't kind of go through. When you're cleaning your brakes, you just want to make sure any excess like rust and anything that, you know, when you hear that squeaky noise on your brakes, you're walking or driving down the street and then you hear you sound like a OC Transpo bus, or so this kind of gets rid of that. Try to clean it up as much as I can. I clean up on one side, flip it over, clean the other side. Again, there's other techniques that you can do to really sand it down. Like all this rust builds up, and that also gets into your brakes. So this is where that grease comes in. This purple brake lubricant, it goes inside where the guide pin goes in. So all this grease, it used to actually be purple, and it's gotten so dirty over the years. Let's clean her up. Use this to bring the grease, basically, this purple lubricant. Oh, another little trick I just learned is I use the drill at the drill bit, basically, and then what I do is I tear off a little bit of a paper towel, and I kind of roll it up. So just a disclaimer, I'm not a professional, so please do this at your own risk. Consult with a professional before you go ahead and do this. I spoke to Canadian Tire, some of the mechanic guy. He actually gave me a great tip to remove a seized a slider kit. So one of the front brakes, one of them wasn't moving because of the rubber. It was like a larger rubber that fit right on here. And basically every time I went in there, after a couple of weeks, it just seized right up. It wasn't sliding back and forth, which is normally supposed to do. So he gave me a tip by advising me to heat up the bracket itself, which I just did earlier. And sure enough, I was able to remove it from the caliper. It was fantastic. Removing all of that crap that's in there. So, as I said to you earlier, I like using the one without the rubber. Gives the lubricant, this brake lubricant. Just put it kind of all over the place here. I usually put a lot at the end because that's where you're going to be guiding it inwards. And the trick is just to get some movement, because when your brakes are squeezing and then when they let go, these need to actually move. And if they don't have any type of lubricant, then it's not going to move. That's the reason why your brake seize. I don't know if you heard that term. When your brake seize, then it's costly if you go to a mechanic. So yeah, I just watched some YouTube videos, learned how to do that, and as I said, guys, I'm far from a mechanic, so disclaimer, I am not a professional. Watched enough videos and you learn how to do certain things. Eventually, life is pretty simple. Okay, so yeah, just get rid of rusts. I'm gonna have to put back the router. These caps, don't forget them. You need to try to clean them as best as you can. As I said, this keeps the guide pins. And when I first tried to do this, I thought it was so hard. I was like trying to struggle with it. Do I put it on first or second? Just when you're taking it off, just remember the order that you actually did. With this one, it's a little bit tricky because you have to put it on beforehand because of the issue that we have with this beam. You just basically put a little bit of pressure on it. You just put it over top here, put a little bit of pressure, and then boom, it just falls right into place. So this is exactly how it should be for the back brakes. Don't forget, you need to put this pin in first because you won't be able to put it in because of that beam. You got to make sure that he bolts. You got to tighten them beforehand, because if you don't, then you're going to be kind of screwed later on down the road. Your brakes will actually malfunction, and you might get into an accident. So just make sure you tighten your bolts to hold the bracket for your caliper. And when I say tighten, I'm talking tighten it. I don't know if you remember at the beginning of this video, I had to use a hammer to loosen it up. Again, just kind of give it some good taps. Do it evenly. Don't just tighten one side and then tighten the other. You can shift from top to bottom. Yes, you might hurt your hand. So now that you tightened it with your hand, you want to give it a good couple of whacks, like 4 or 5 whacks, just to make sure that this is the most crucial part, that it stays on your vehicle, the brakes itself. And she's in tight. So that holds, like I said, this holds or goes to your actual wheel itself, which holds the brakes in place, and then you can actually put the caliper on. And remember I did earlier, I push back the piston so that I could easily basically grab onto here. And now I can tighten this bottom one here. You have to tighten it super tight, as I was saying to you earlier. Just do one at a time. Let's get rid of that dirt, but do it evenly. Put some grease on here. So now my back brakes will probably stick. The final product is going to be tightening with your ratchet. So basically your brake should be doing exactly that, as in it freely goes from one side to the other. Make sure the rubber is nice and sealed. There's no way of crap getting in there. I'm using 14 millimeters. And that's it for brakes. It's, like I said, it's literally that easy. Once you understand the concept, and try to keep your ratchet as tight as possible. Let's take a look with the flashlight. Your rubber is as sealed as possible, because in the Canadian winters a lot of crap gets in there and you don't want stuff getting in. So what I do is I put the NTCs on the screws or the bolts. Then you're like, well, why are you putting it there? As I'm screwing it in, it'll pick it up and carry it along. So again, before you forget, don't forget to close the lid. That, like I said, is your brake fluid. This is what it's like a pipe or a hose, basically goes all the way to your brakes, and you need to loosen that or open it up so that you can actually get your brakes in here. Alright, so let's get this Nissan back in order. I always like to use the lock, because it has a long reach. I'll put that one in first. So again, try to do it diagonally, as in one across from the other, and then as you do this one, and do this one, and so forth. But don't tighten them all the way, because if you tighten them all the way, the wheels are going to be all warped. Hopefully you enjoyed this little tutorial on for Nissan Murano 2010 for the back brakes. Alright, have a great day.